Hi, I'm Geraldine Patrick from Earth Timekeepers, and I am going to briefly tell you a little bit about what happened at the end or closing of the fifth sun, and what connection was there between the ending of the fifth sun and the ending of the 13 Baktun cycle of the Maya. Because we have heard a lot about the ending of these two cycles, and we may have heard that one happened in 2012 and the other in 2013. So we want to understand what is the connection between both of them, right? So let's get started. We have heard about the stone of the suns, or the so-called Aztec calendar stone. It is neither Aztec nor a calendar, but we do know that the Otomi-Toltec must have designed it and carved it towards the year 1100 or 1200, and that the Mexica, particularly Axayacatl, one of the last governors of the Triple Alliance, had in mind the idea of bringing this very large stone up to the Temple of the Sun, something that he could never achieve, in fact. Over here, we see the symbols that refer to each of the suns or eras, each lasting 1040 years. First, we have the 4 Jaguar sun, next 4 Wind sun, next ended the 4 Water sun, then finalized the 4 Rain sun, and lately the 4 Movement sun came to an end. Together, they sum up 5,200 years, which is 1/5 of the precession of the equinoxes of 26,000 years. Now, I'm highlighting here the year which in the Otomi-Toltec calendar system is referred to as year 13 Reed, and the closing of a cycle of 1040 years. And over here in orange, we have the symbol for movement. Now for the Maya, we have Monument 6 in Tortuguero in Tabasco, near the Gulf of Mexico, where this stone was carved to tell us about the closing of the 13 Baktun cycle. It says that the 13 Baktun cycle would be completed on 4 Ajaw, 3 Kannk'iin, marked in red here, and he will be witnessed, Bolon Yokte, in his great investiture. We won't speak about who was Bolon Yokte, but he indeed did show up. Now, we have here the stone of the suns, a detail of that with 4 movement day, and also 4 Ajaw, 3 Kannk'iin for the Maya. There's another date which is called 1 Rain, which is going to be very relevant, and you'll see in a minute why. Now, we're going to pay attention to this cycle of Venus as it happened during years 2012 and 2013. It so happens that evening Venus did a conjunction with the moon that announced the coming of an eclipse season, and then it made a transit in front of the sun, something which can be seen as a bad omen among the Mesoamerican people. And next we are seeing a conjunction of morning Venus and then a first rising of evening Venus. How are these events tied to those dates? Well, we have that 4 movement occurred right there on that conjunction of evening Venus with the moon on March 26, 2012. We have 10-star rabbit on June the 5th, 2012 for this transit of Venus. And over here, we are remembering that the day one rain happened 9 days ago, which is very important for Mesoamerican people to begin making special offerings so to avoid some kind of catastrophe when the actual event of the death of the sun happens due to such a transit of Venus. Then 4 movement occurred 260 days after that of March 26 on December 11 and 12 of 2012. And finally, there was a 4 Ajaw day on May the 3rd, 2013. All of these days were very important to consider by the Otomi-Toltec and Maya peoples because of the possibility that events such as storms and earthquakes and wildfires and floods would occur because they had seen this before. And so they noticed that precisely on this year, such a series of events would require paying much respect to each of the 4 movements of Mother Earth. So here we are, 13 years later, expectant about the outcome of all these events that can determine the new dawn of the Mesoamerican civilization and of all of humanity. Well, thank you for listening, and till I see you again.